Hey, if you're pregnant over 40, I have just the community for you. It's a private community away from Facebook where women just like you come together to meet and support one another during pregnancy. To sign up for the waitlist, go to over40fabulousandpregnant.com/waitlist and be the first to know when the membership is open. I can't wait to see you inside. Welcome to Over 40, Fabulous and Pregnant. I am your host, Jamie Massey, and you're listening to episode 57. If you are looking for pregnancy stories of women over 40, you've come to the right place. And today on the show, we have a very special episode. It's special because it's not just a pregnancy story. And as my husband put it, it's complicated, but it's such a beautiful story. And in this episode, Barb shares her loss of 2 children under very different circumstances. And only 6 months after the loss of her 13-year-old daughter, she had dreams of having a baby. And her husband was totally on board. So awesome. And if 2 child losses isn't enough, during all of the testing to be approved for IVF, she found out she had 3 brain tumors. Yes, and we haven't even gotten to her pregnancy yet. So it's just an incredible story of hope. But before we get to her story, I wanted to just give a quick update on my transfer. I can't believe it was last Wednesday already. It was such a great day. I got acupuncture right before the transfer, and I was so happy. My husband drove me to the appointment and then drove me to the transfer. Driving just stresses me out, and it's both places are kind of far, and oh my gosh, I was so grateful to just ride and not deal with the stress of driving. And I think it went really well. And this time I didn't want to eat out. I just really wanted a good, hearty, homemade meal for that matter. I had made broth from one of our roosters, and then I roasted a butternut squash that was a year old, by the way. It made it through this whole year. So I roasted that from the garden, and then I made this really delicious soup. And then we had fried eggs from our chickens. And then we watched funny movies all day, and I took a really long nap. Thank you, Shelley, for the movie idea. It was absolutely perfect. And I really loved hearing your advice about when to test, if at all. Like last time I took a pregnancy test at day 7. And my attitude has been quite different this time around. I haven't been worried about the outcome. Maybe it's because it's my second transfer, or I've been thinking this is totally out of my control and I need to just chill out about the whole thing. I'm not sure. But right now, it's day 4 after the transfer, and I don't even feel the need to test. However, I do suspect I will be testing like either day 7, 8, or 9. And honestly, I feel absolutely pregnant right now. I'm not sure if it's because the hormones or what. My husband said it's way too soon. And maybe my confidence is helping me calm down. Like, who knows? But my blood test for the HGC level is on Friday. And I will either let you know next episode or on Instagram or possibly both. So I'm very excited. I've been sleeping quite a bit. And with that, let's get into Barb's journey at 57. Barb, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
So lovely to have you. Barb was pregnant at 57. She will be sharing that story. But first, Barb, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep, I sure will. I am Barb, and I live in New England, have my whole life. I've been a competitive runner, a teacher, a coach, a mom. Now I'm a big CrossFit athlete. Well, big because I do it all the time. And I am a survivor of some pretty tragic things in my life, one of which is losing a child, actually losing 2 children, very different circumstances, and the mother of a baby at 57, which is not something I ever thought I would say was going to happen in my life. So I've lived in New Hampshire almost all of my life. I went to school in Boston, ran track. I'm so old that my freshman year at Boston University was the first year NCAA recognized women. So,
I love that.
I know. Yeah. So whenever I go back to visit, all the current athletes are like, wow. Like, okay. I'm the same age as their grandmother, but that's okay.
So let's go back to your story about getting pregnant and conceiving.
Yes, I would be happy to.
Do you want to touch on your other children that you lost also?
Yeah. I'll quickly touch on them. So okay. I never ever in my whole life thought I would have a child at 57. I have 4 children, 2 of whom live in heaven, 2 of whom are here with me. And actually was never going to have children at all. It just wasn't something. I had a pretty rough childhood. So I thought, you know what, the buck stops here. I'm going to end the cycle of abuse in my family. I don't need to be a mom. I'll be the cool auntie, And then right shortly after I was with Kenny, we found out we were pregnant and didn't know. I was on the pill and wasn't expecting to be pregnant. And it was a big surprise. And that was the process of losing my first baby. He had a very bad heart defect. His name was Gordy, after his uncle and his grandfather. And he ended up only living for 25 weeks in my belly. And since I didn't know I was pregnant until 14 weeks, I really only knew him for 9 weeks. It was just, I found out about him in the end of June and we delivered him August 21st. And so that wasn't a long time to even know him. During that time, what I did find out was that I desperately loved being pregnant and thought I should be a mom. And so after his birth and death, Kenny and I sort of refocused like parents who lose children do and thought, okay, let's get healthy and everything. And we, a year later, in August of 2000, got pregnant with Gracie. So Gracie was born in April of 2001. And 2 years later, Molly was born in April of 2003. And there it is. I have my husband. I have my house. I actually have a picket fence. It's white. And these 2 beautiful girls. And I thought, this is it, right? I have everything I need. I have my little family. Kenny has 3 children from his first marriage who were about 10 years older than Gracie and Molly. So they were a part of their life, but not a day-to-day part of it. When Molly was 13, she had a very brief 2 or 3 months of really bad headaches and throwing up and all these things. And we took her to the hospital over and over again, to the doctors, to the ER. And we really just kept getting sent back home. I feel that she was sort of overlooked because she was a skinny 13-year-old girl. And I feel that had she been a 13-year-old boy, they would have thought she hit her head maybe. She just never was given imaging, was sent home with pamphlets on meditation. You need to gain weight, drink more water. It was unbelievably frustrating. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I really, really cared for my pediatrician's office and I had faith in my hospital at the time. And so I just went with what they said. And as a mom, I kick myself now for not being more aggressive with questions. So what happened was on May 1st of 2016, she had the worst night ever with vomiting headaches. We called 911, took her to the ER, and she sat in that ER for 16 hours, unconscious most of the time. They gave her some medicine for pain and she just never woke up. She just kept slipping deeper and deeper. And I kept insisting that they do a CAT scan. And they kept saying, no, we don't do CAT scans on kids, which I'm an athletic coach. We do CAT scans on kids all the time. And so we got transferred up to the pediatric wing and the nurse up there right away thought, okay, this isn't right. And they ordered a scan. And while they were preparing her for the CAT scan, finally, a tumor ruptured in her head and killed her. So I watched all of this in front of me. Her skin turned funny colors and her body lose movement. And we didn't know at the time that she had died. They got her heart beating again. They took an MRI. They rushed her to a bigger hospital. They removed the tumor. But really, she had died right there late at night in the hospital after being there all day. So that whole week of her on life support is actually, this is going to sound odd, one of the best weeks of my life in that setting, because for 5 days in that hospital, everyone she knew, everyone that we knew and loved was able to come and say goodbye to her, which a lot of parents who lose children do not have that opportunity. And there were people like, why are you letting all these people come? I would just be all by myself. And I'm like, I have the rest of my life to be by myself with this. I want to talk about her. I want people to say goodbye, have closure. And so we had this incredible week. And then we came home, and that was when the incredible stopped. And so it wasn't long after Molly's death that I started having this strange dream that I should have a baby. And, dreams can be different. Like, I've had Molly come visit me in dreams. Those dreams are very different than a normal dream. Nightmares can be intense, but you wake up and you realize, okay, that was just a bad dream. And these dreams around the baby were those very real sort of, am I awake or asleep? Like, you have an awareness that you're in the dream. Does that make sense? Have you ever had that kind of dream where something's going on?
Yeah.
And so I would wake up and just be like, what is going on? So of course, what I thought was, okay, I'm grieving and I'm traumatized. And so the psychological way I'm dealing with this is to have a dream about having a baby. So all that summer, I, just got up every day and tried my best to be alive, to take care of Gracie, to take care of Kenny, to make sense of this devastation. And the dream was really persistent.
Yeah.
How
old were you when this
I was
happening?
53. I was 53 when Molly died. So she was born in April. I turned 40 in July. I was 52 when she died, and I turned 53 in July. So 52, 53, my early 50s. So I went to my normal pediatrician. I went to my normal OB, and she was an older woman and very close to retiring. And I said, look, I've been having this dream. I really would like to see if I could have a baby. And she bit my head off, like, that's insane, and really yelled at me. And I just sat there a bit dumbfounded. And keep in mind now, I'm fresh off of doctors yelling at me that nothing's wrong with Molly and that I need to stop asking for CAT scans, right? So I went home and I was really upset, like horribly upset.
Yeah.
And so I called this OB who had worked with my OB that I had when Molly was born years and years ago, and Dr. Chaudhary. And he's this great guy. He's of Indian descent. And he's just a hoot. And he's like, get in here. And so I went in, and how are you? And I told him my dreams. And so he said, well, we can't do it at this hospital because we age out at 49, but let's do some blood work and we'll see where you're at. And so we did some blood work, and he said, probably the safest bet for you is IVF. And at your age, probably it's the only way you'll be approved if you can find a clinic that does people over 50. And I said, okay. So I had not even approached menopause at that point, maybe some perimenopause symptoms, but I was still having a period all the time. Then Molly died, and they stopped. So I was about 6 months after. So he said, what you're in is trauma-induced menopause, where your body is so traumatized that it's actually very common in women in their 50s that have a big trauma.
Really?
So my blood work wasn't super menopausal, but I hadn't had a period. Molly, Gracie, and I were all having our periods the week that she was on life support, which was another hard thing. It's hard. It was just such a connective, your period is like evidence of life. You're menstruating because you're a woman that can make a baby and grow it. And here's my daughter who's never going to wake up. So these things always connect in my head. So he just said, you'll need to, look around and find a clinic. And so I have a really good friend, Polly. She's my friend that if I'm at a police station, I need to be bailed out, she'll come get me no matter what. And I'll go get her. And we've actually done those things. Another story for another podcast. But so I said to her, she has had some medical issues, and she connected me with her OB in Boston, who was wonderful. And she called me on the phone and she said, we don't do it here, but here's the clinic you need to go to and ask for Dr. Cardoni. And so I found this clinic in Stoneham, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston. And Vito, he's retired now. Oh, I love him. He's just as Italian as you can imagine. He's this big, 75, 80-year-old Italian man. He walks with a shuffle, thick accent. He has one of those faces that's smiling, even when he's not smiling, those. Mm-hmm. And so he sits down and I sort of tell him the story and I tell him where I am. He makes an appointment and he's like, let's make this happen. Like he was just on board immediately. So this was, still 2016 going into 2017 now. And you do a lot of preparation work before you get approved. We had to see a therapist and I had to have, my mammogram was up to date, but I had all this testing I had to do, but I did all the basic testing first to see if we would go to step 2. And I passed everything. I passed the the EKG and I passed the psychological and I passed, they do a little hysteroscopy where they take, all this, they take a bit of your uterus out, like all of that. Mm-hmm. And he goes, the inside of your body does not match your age. So I have no worries about this. And of course, then when you get the cost, and I wasn't back to work yet after Molly's death, we were still in year 1 and we were in the throes of a very difficult lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So we said, thank you. And I said, I don't have the money right now. And so we're going to hold off for a bit. And he said, well, we're here when you're ready. And we drove home and this was in January of, 2017 now. And I just looked up at the sky and said, okay, stop. I can't do this right now. Cause I didn't want, the dreams were becoming persistent. Sometimes it was just a voice. Sometimes it was a long, intense dream about Molly and Gracie and their dance friends and all these moms I knew and how they would have these conversations that would always steer back to why aren't you trying to have the baby? And, they weren't consistent or the same. They covered every aspect of my life. So they went away though. And so all of 17 and 18, we were in the throes of that lawsuit, which was a full-time nightmare. However, I'm glad that we did it. It gave me a place to channel my grief and channel my anger and energy into the lawsuit. We settled that in 2018 in June. And about 2 weeks later, I had the dream again, my first baby dream, and it was sort of like the universe is like, all right, you have the money
it's
now.
Time,
yeah. And so I had been really, really drinking heavily and I was on a gazillion prescription drugs. I don't know how I'm okay, quite frankly, when I look at all I was on and the interactions, and I can't imagine, but I have a nerve condition called trigeminal neuralgia and they treat that with anti-seizure meds. So I had 3 of those. Then I was on, the Xanax and the Lamictal and the lorazepam and the alprazolam and all of the antidepressants and the help you sleep, help you wake up, keep you stable, all of it. And then I was drinking a ton. I really am amazed that I'm okay, but I am. So the first thing we went back to Dr. Cardoni. So now it's 2018 and I'm 55 and he says, okay, you have to go off all this medicine. So during this time, have a mammogram. My colonoscopy was fine. Thank goodness. Have another EKG, do all these different things, all the testing. So come back when you're off all the medicine. So I went to my primary care doctor, God bless her, this woman, Dr. Laura. We sat down with a calendar and a big list of my 13 drugs. And she looked at them and what they're for. And she charted out a plan where we would wean off of some, cut down some and leave the others the same and then cut those down and then cut those down. Like it was this whole, it took us like an hour to put it together. We really, really laid it out. And I will tell you right now, I have such profound respect for addicts that come clean because that was as hard as dealing with Molly, coming off all of those. Most of the time in those from August 15th to December 1st, I felt like I could hear the ocean in my head. My hands and feet were asleep most of the time. Like my voice, when I talked, I felt like echoey, like I was just so not okay because my body was just having to, come back to normal.
Yeah.
But we did it,
But you had motivation too, right?
Yes. And I desperately wanted to come out of the black hole I'd been living in. I didn't want to be feeling drugged up all the time. I wanted to, I knew that, I hired a spiritual mentor at this time and joined a spiritual mentoring group. My CrossFit gym had one of those pay $500. And if you lose 30 pounds in 8 weeks, you get your money back. I signed up for one of those. I was very heavy. I'd gained like 30 pounds. And
did you do it?
I did. Yeah. I was super thin. I've never been a heavy person. A lot of my weight was medication. But a lot of it was, I stopped eating anything healthy for a long time. I ate carbs and drank alcohol. Like that's really what I did.
Yeah.
So all of that was sort of, it was like this whole purification process is how I feel. And so I got through that process and December came. And what I noticed with going off all the medication is my face was in agonizing pain. Your trigeminal nerve is right behind your ear in your brain. And so trigeminal neuralgia is when the nerve becomes irritated, it's close. The nerve center is close to the nerve. So if you have trauma, sometimes it triggers the nerve center and the nerve center continually fires and it never stops. So you constantly feel like you have pain, so mine felt like a toothache. I had like 3 teeth pulled thinking I needed them pulled because they hurt so much. There was nothing wrong with those teeth. It was trigeminal neuralgia. Wow. So when I went off all those pills, my face pain was unmanageable. And I thought, I can't go 9 months. There's no way I can do this. And because of my age and all of that, a young woman with epilepsy could absolutely take anti-seizure meds during a pregnancy. It's a whole different beast, because for her, they would be a different medicine. A 53-year-old woman with epilepsy wouldn't be approved to have a baby. So do you see the conundrum there?
Yeah.
So there's this amazing doctor in New York City, another guy not from America, Dr. Eskandar. He's from Turkey, Turkish descent. So I have my Italian, my Indian, and my Turk. So he was amazing. And I emailed him and said, I got your name through a friend of mine. This is my situation. I'm trying to have a baby. Could you help me? And he goes, absolutely. Have this MRI and then schedule an appointment with my office. And his nurse couldn't believe that he said yes, because they weren't taking new patients. And afterwards, he just said, something about you told me that I was supposed to help you. So what happens is I have the MRI with the contrast and they find 3 brain tumors in my head. So keep in mind now, Molly died of a brain tumor that we didn't know she had. So the whole time we're fighting for her, I had 3 tumors in my head. Nothing to do with my face pain, completely unrelated.
Separate. Yeah.
Yeah. So what now, right? So Kenny, my husband at the time, was still on kidney dialysis. He needed a kidney transplant. He was extremely sick and just getting sicker. And this was all my daughter Gracie's senior year of high school. So Kenny has the dialysis. Molly has died. Now, the one healthy person in Gracie's life, me, her mother, has brain tumors and they have to come out. One of them was sitting, it sort of went in my eye and ear, like at the junction of those 2 nerves. But my carotid artery was being compressed. And so Dr. Eskandar, his concern was that I would have a stroke because this artery was being compressed. So I would never have gone off my mouth medicine if I wasn't trying to have this baby. So I thought, okay, this is why I'm supposed to have the baby, to save my life. Like I could probably stop now. Maybe I'm not supposed to have the baby, but I just sort of let everything unfold because at this point, I felt like I was just a passenger on a train, the baby train, right? Yeah. And it wasn't really about me and my desires. So I had the tumor removed. Then I had the other 2 radiated, and then I had the nerve so I have a giant scar here and a scar back here. So from January to April, I had 2 craniotomies and radiation to take care of the brain tumors and my face condition. And that following June, before that. So all of that happens, right? So as I said, Kenny's getting sicker and sicker. These are where some of these weird connections come in. So we were at Disney in April. So I have April 10th, I have my head cut open. April 24th, we go to Disney because, I'm smart. So we rented a house and we were staying with friends. So when Kenny had dialysis, he and I would just stay home and everybody else would go to the park. So Kenny was lying on a lawn chair, just like trying not to throw up. And I was bald and my head was hurting and I was just miserable. And I'm online on the computer and I see that a friend of Molly's and Gracie's from dance was on life support at the same hospital Molly had been at. And now we're at the same time of year now, late April, going into May. And so I messaged the mom, and their daughter, Rachel, was 20 at the time. And she had gone to a restaurant and there was peanut paste in an egg roll that she ate. And it wasn't on the menu that there were peanuts in it. And she went into anaphylaxis. And so a whole series of missteps, and she ended up being on life support and not surviving. So when we got home from Florida, we just jumped into action for this family because why wouldn't we? Everyone had helped us with Molly, and Rachel had danced in Molly's memorial service. We had a big show for Molly's memorial service. It was at a theater. And so Rachel was in the opening number. So in the whole process of helping this family say goodbye to their daughter and, just everything that had been done for us, my tattoo here, it says #HeartMolly Be the Miracle. We made Be the Miracle shirts for Rachel because that was something she always said. So we just took care of that family like we had been taken care of. So in the process of setting up for Rachel's removal from life support, her mother asked if we had donated Molly's organs, and we weren't allowed to because we didn't know if Molly's tumor was cancerous, which it was not. And I said, it wasn't. And that's frustrating because Kenny could have had her kidney. So Jen looks at me and she says, Kenny needs a kidney? And I said, yes, he does. Well, what's his blood type? And I said, O positive. And she went, So May 7th was Rachel's 21st birthday. And so they unplugged her the next day. So she's at the hospital having a 21st birthday party. Molly, we're at the cemetery because May 7th is Molly's unplugged day. So we're sending lanterns into the sky to say goodbye to Molly. And Rachel's mother calls and says, we'd like to give Kenny one of Rachel's kidneys. I can't tell this story. So the kidney that lives in Molly's dad danced in Molly's funeral. Like that's an intense, so again, that might not have anything to do with my baby journey, but everything was a part of right now, me getting healthy, getting Kenny healthy. How can we be healthy?
It was your
path.
So
yes. And so May 9th, Kenny gets a new kidney. So that summer we get approved for IVF. I've had enough time now. So, and so we went ahead and had an IVF transfer in August of 2019. Mm-hmm. So it didn't work. And I was bummed out about it, but not overly so. And this is where I have to be very, very, very careful. So if you're a mom listening to my story, I know how lucky I am to have a failed transfer and not be devastated by it. That's not lost on me because I know most women that go into this journey are desperate for a pregnancy to take and develop and grow. So I do not take my lack of grief about this lightly. It wasn't that I didn't grieve that the pregnancy didn't work, but for me, it was only a part of the whole story. Like Jack's arrival was a part of the brain tumors and the kidney transplant. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
I don't ever want to come off as glib, or uncaring because the women I met, some of them were like, well, we wish we were you. And I'm like, I'm sure that you do. And I'm going to honor that as best I can. So when I was on the phone with the nurse, I was, in my little swimming pool outside. And I said, I didn't think so. I could kind of tell. Plus, you're not supposed to take pregnancy tests, right? I peed on a stick every day.
Of course. Yes.
Give me a break. Like, now don't pee on a stick. Okay. So, and there was no line. So I wasn't surprised by this news, but I thought that was it. Okay. My journey's over. I'm 56 now. So I thought, their cutoff was 55. That's what they said. So I said to my nurse, well, what should I do now? Am I just done? And she goes, keep taking the estrace, just keep taking it. And your follow-up appointment with Dr. Cardoni's in 2 weeks. And let's just see what he says. So I hung up with Kenny, with Tammy, our nurse. And I looked at Kenny and I'm like, I think Dr. Cardoni has a plan. So we go back and we sit down and he goes, first of all, this was not you. This was absolutely the quality of the embryo. It was not your fault. It was his fault. So I am honest with Kenny being the sperm donor. So Kenny's first round of sperm, now he's had a vasectomy, so they had to suck it out with a needle, right? It wasn't like he could just, have a moment of pleasure and share his sperm. It wasn't like that at all. So he said, you're going to go back. You have a new kidney. you're going to try again, and we're going to get some healthy sperm. So we thank Rachel all the time. Thanks, Rach.
Yeah.
Because, and a lot of Jack's feisty behavior has Rachel written all over it. So it makes me laugh sometimes.
We have a lot of women wondering if you used an egg donor or your own eggs.
Yes. And because of my age and because of a couple of different things we tried, I'm not as open about that. The first time around, I used a frozen egg. I went through, the binders of egg donors. That's another thing. I met amazing women in these binders, right? Mm-hmm. You read what they look like and why they're donating. And the woman I chose for this procedure belonged to the LDS church, Mormon church. And, having children is really, really big in that religion. You show your love for God by creating more children of God that will grow up to be good Mormons, I think. But, and so she couldn't have babies. And so she had helped her sister and she realized she could help a lot of people. And so she did this, which just struck me. My daughter Gracie's first name is Ember, and I named her after a girl that I used to coach on my cross country team, Ember Smith, who was a Mormon. And so it all just seemed connected to me, but that didn't work. And Dr. Cardoni, so when we went back and he said, it wasn't your fault, it's his fault. And he goes, I want to try. And I said, so can we try again? And he goes, twist my arm. And I said, only if I have to. And he pulls out a clipboard and he goes, I have a list. And so we tried a handful of things on me that I don't think are tried. There are still things that are like being tested and such. And because I wasn't like, I have to have a baby, I think he felt a bit more free to, let's see if this might work. And, and let's try this. So I don't share a lot of that because I honor his wishes that I not. Okay. So he said, share as much as you can, but be as vague as you can. So, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. So, and what I'm hoping is all of the things that work so well with me will one day help even more women have babies.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that I will say right now that I don't believe that women can just be an oven for a baby and not have a huge piece of them in that baby, because for 9 months, every bit of your DNA goes through that baby. All your blood goes through that baby. You grow the baby hears your heartbeat and your voice, all of those things. I have a couple of friends who are surrogates. And what's amazing to me is how much the babies they had for other people embodies so much of them.
Sure,
so I know a lot of women who look at egg donation, and I felt this way at first, and with my process and all the different ways we tried to create healthy embryos, it opened my eyes to it. It made me really realize that that DNA is a huge piece, but not the most important piece.
It's not the only piece. Yeah.
Correct. And once you can sort of walk through all this and really come around and see all the different sides of it. If I were to do this again, I think what I might do is just adopt an embryo. These women have frozen embryos that they know they're not going to use. So I think of all these little potential babies in freezers.
I want to do the same thing.
Yes. If I could find a IVF clinic, over 60, I would, and that's another story, but, I would do it and I would adopt an embryo. I actually have a neurologist who has some frozen embryos, and she's like, you can have one of mine. And I have a friend at a CrossFit gym that said the same thing. I have frozen embryos. If you want to do it again, you're welcome. It just, I don't know, motherland, right?
Yep.
Motherhood isn't just one little narrow thing. It's all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for asking. And I'm sorry, I'm not willing to share more. Someday I can't wait to share it all.
That's okay.
And I also, and I like to honor Jack as well. But I will also say that as mothers going through this process, there's no wrong way to feel about these things. No one should say you shouldn't feel that way. Well, don't tell me how I should or shouldn't feel. I'm going to feel the way I feel. It's part of my journey. So now we're getting into 2020 and COVID hits. So my transfer was supposed to occur in February of 2020, or March rather. And then COVID hit and everything gets put on hold. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, back to just keeping the estrase and all that kind of stuff. What I loved, though, I loved having my period. And people are like, what? But when you get older, to me, it's proof of potential. Like, it's proof of the fact that I can grow a baby, yes, I'm having my period. And all my friends are like, you're happy about that? I'm like, I am. I don't know. Call me crazy. Well, I am crazy. So, that's just a part of it. So June of 2020 rolls around and the IVF clinic they of course kept continuing to treat the women who were thick into it that couldn't not be seen. But Dr. Cardoni called me and he goes, get in here. I want you to, he was retiring, which I didn't know at the time. So June into July of 2020 was my final, shots in the butt and patches and, all the craziness. So on July 26th, I had my transfer. I turned 57 on July 29th. And I had my positive pregnancy test on August 5th. August 5th is the day that I conceived Gracie.
Oh, neat.
All those years ago. So that was sort of fun. So we didn't tell anyone. Of course, you don't tell anyone early on anyway. I was wicked excited. I knew, of course, I peed on the stick every day. Same thing. So when I went down for that blood test and everything, I just knew I could feel it as well. And we were sort of hoping for twins. And the reason for that was that, we're older. Jack's, Gracie's 22. Jack's other siblings are in their late 30s. Like he doesn't have anyone his age. So we're a bit disappointed when it was just one baby, but actually now I'm okay with that. One baby's fine. So we said nothing. The first 12 weeks were your standard 12 weeks. And, I'd become really, really fit at the time. I weighed just under 140 at the time. I was working out every day at CrossFit. I went, I called my OB. He was actually in the delivery room with my stepdaughter delivering her baby. So Jack has some nephews that are his age, nieces and nephews that are right around his age.
So cool.
Yeah. So we didn't tell anyone. And then the 12-week mark comes. And of course, that's an excruciating 12 to 13 to 14 weeks because you stop with the hormones and the patches. At least that's how it was for me. You continue with all those hormones the first 12 weeks. I sort of thought you would wean off them. I think that's what I thought. Like, you would go every other day with the hormones and not change no, you just stop. And so I had this utter panic at that time that the pregnancy would end there. And this is when I think, when I felt the life in me, is when it became all about the baby. Like I stopped being like, oh, I'm just on a journey. Now it was, okay, I have this baby in my belly. Nothing can go wrong. So, logically speaking, I stayed healthy. I continued working out. I worked up all the way. I worked out. I lifted weights and all of it right up until the week Jack was born. Like I never,
Wow.
I mean, I've obviously modified. I have some great video clips of me lifting weights with my big belly up over the head and stuff.
I love that.
Yeah, they're fun. So got to the 13-week mark and I said, okay, I can finally tell people. And Dr. Chaudhary, God bless him, he said, you know what? No, you can't tell anyone until you're at week 22. And I just looked at him like, what? And he said, I'm going to put you through every test there is, because the judgment you're going to receive when people find out you're pregnant will be huge. How about we wait until the baby's healthy and born, and then you make it public news, then you make it big. So at first I was irritated by this because I just wanted everyone to know.
Yeah. You were excited.
But as I went along, I'm like, So I told my CrossFit coaches, because I'm working out and they need to know that my expanding belly isn't gas or a tummy tumor, that there's a baby in there. So little by little people knew. But I had every test. Two things were fun for me in the testing. One was every insurance claim that my OB submitted was rejected because diagnosis inconsistent with age of patient. That's why my insurance would get kicked back. So of course I'd call and they'd say, we can't prevent the kickback letter. We're covering everything. Don't worry about it. It was just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to cover the ultrasound because you're too old to be pregnant. Okay, but I had the ultrasound. There's a baby in there. It was that. And then the other one was a lot of the computer software couldn't generate the required answers because it didn't go up to 57. It stopped at 49 or it stopped at 50. It couldn't accommodate me. So a lot of the testing had to be sorted through manually.
Wow.
Because they couldn't just plug it in to the programming. It didn't work. Yeah, I know. So, and of course there were a lot of COVID restrictions still. So I had a couple of phone appointments with the high risk, the fetal, the high risk OB. And she's like, you can't have a BMI this low. Like, I can't wrap my head around what you look like. You're 57. Like I said, I know you're picturing a polyester pantsuit, woman in a recliner, crocheting potholders. I get it, but that's not me. It's not what I look like. I know what you're thinking. So when we could finally meet in person, well, we were actually on an iPad, like a Zoom meeting. You have to stand up. So I stand up. I'm like, okay, here I am. And this was at 22 weeks. And so all the tests that we had every test, and it brought me back to baby Gordy and the number of tests we had on him, his little teeny tiny self, because of the defect. So we had so many tests, ultrasounds all the time, and blood work, and all urine tests once a week in case I had high protein, like all of it. And everything was fine. So the final test I had to have was a fetal echocardiogram. And of course, that brought me right back to baby Gordy. And we had to go to the same hospital where, 21 years prior, we had gone for that one. So we go for that test. And I'm anxious because I'm in this place that brought me such heartbreak, 21 years prior. So the ultrasound tech is talking away, and I talk about Molly, and we all know Molly because it was the hospital that, was sent to for her brain tumor. And then we talked about baby Gordy and Dr. Rockenmacher, this guy with a thick Irish accent, and everything we remembered. And she just laughed and giggled, and we chatted away through the whole thing. And I told her all about baby Gordy and how traumatic this was for me, how triggering rather. So the cardiologist comes in, and she's a woman who I've never met, and she sits down, and she's acting a bit funny. And I just want to hear that everything's fine. And she said, everything's fine, but I have some questions for you. And she said, this baby that you lost to a heart defect, what was the heart defect? And I said, it was transposition of the great arteries. It was basically backwards, upside down. I describe it all to her. And she said, you remember that so specifically? And I said, of course, it was a very traumatic. Yes, I do. Yeah. She goes, what did you do with that sweet boy? And I said, I donated his body to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And she gets real quiet. She said, I was involved in the autopsy on that baby. So here's a woman sitting with me with baby Gordy and my baby Jack in my belly. And she had held my little dead baby in her hands.
Wow.
And isn't that crazy? Like, I smile because I just feel like, so the other piece to this is she said, she goes, I retired from NICU work. I can't do sick babies anymore. The only reason I'm here today is because were short staffed and no one here to cover. And when I saw that one of them was this, I was going to say no, but I saw your age and assumed that it was a mistake and that you were having a different kind of ultrasound. So I came in. I'm like, well, you were supposed to come in. So that's when I got so much information. She said how helpful it was to see the heart that little, to see it, because they can look at how can we get ahead of this and repair it so that these babies can be born. So it was pretty amazing. That Kenny and I couldn't talk we drove home and just came and sat. Like we couldn't even talk because it was just so.
Yeah. It was a connection, full circle.
Yeah. Big time.
Amazing.
So it was amazing. So my pregnancy continued on just fine. Now I'm starting to show, but now I have permission. I can tell people. So I start telling people. And of course, that's the best, the total expressionless response from most people. Hey, I have some news for you. I'm 22 weeks pregnant with a baby boy. Like they don't know. They just stare at me like, what? And so that was fun. So I, trucked along, bigger, working out, just sort of living my life, getting everything ready like you do. So I got to 34 weeks and suddenly my legs swelled up humongous, just huge. And I didn't have any of this. I had all easy pregnancies. I'm lucky that way as well. I conceived easily and I had easy pregnancies and easy deliveries, 8 hours start to finish. My most difficult delivery, quite honestly, was baby Gordy, the baby that we delivered at 25 weeks. That took like 15 hours. Yeah. So I developed preeclampsia is the problem. So I went to my OB and all this. So again, I had been so laid back about it and so detached, like whatever happens, happens. And I'm like, no, I want this baby in April. Jack's due date was April 13th. So 13 is a significant number because Molly was 13. Molly was born April 1st, Gracie, April 24th. I just felt like it was supposed to be April. And now I feel like Jack was like, screw that. I want my own month.
Yeah.
Like I was just hung up on it. And so I got really angry. Like, no, you can't make me have this baby. And
you know what's interesting is my birthday is April 13th.
See?
Crazy.
See?
I love it.
I do too. Oh my goodness. How that takes my breath away sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's St. Patrick's Day, like the 17th, 18th of March. Mm-hmm. Dr. Chaudhary, who I wanted to deliver the baby, is going on a quick weekend vacation. I'm like, why are you going away now? He's like, because you're not supposed to have the baby for another 2 weeks. And I was getting it out of it. Like so he had to miss it, which he was a bit bummed out about. So I fought and fought. So they gave me some steroid injection and they sent me home and gave me take magnesium. It will help your blood pressure and all this. So I go back the next day, which is Friday the 19th. My blood pressure was like 195 over 105. Apparently that's not good. I felt fine, but that's what preeclampsia can do sometimes. You don't notice that you feel bad, but your body's not okay. Mm. So they didn't even want to let me go home. I live about a mile from the hospital and they didn't even want to let me go home. And I'm like, look, I have the only car and I have a bag packed. Please, I'll be back in a half an hour. So on the way home, I called my friend to come take I didn't do any belly pictures because I thought I had like another 3 weeks, right? I wanted to be big. So she comes flying over. We did belly pictures outside, and then I called my friend Tony, who writes for a local news website. You got to come over and start the interview. I'm going to have the baby. So I'm running around like crazy. Kenny's like, stop running. Please stop running. Please stop running. Cause I have this high blood pressure. So I go back and I check myself in. So Kenny stayed home. Gracie, let me talk about Gracie for a minute. Let me backpedal a teeny bit. Gracie was not happy at all about this pregnancy. It really, really threw her for a loop. We confided in her that we were trying to do this after the brain tumors were found because we explained if I wasn't trying to do this, I wouldn't have found the brain tumors. And her response was, good, now you don't have to have a baby. I'm fine. I'm still here, Mom. You don't need to replace me or replace Molly. And she made it very much about her, but you know what? Of course she would. She's a teenager that lost her sister and she's trying to make sense of this life. And so when we re-began the process, we just I chose not to tell her because quite honestly, I didn't think it would work. I really, truly thought it wasn't about the baby and why involve her in something that's not going to end up being anything anyway. And then when I found out I was pregnant, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to wait until for sure I'm not going to lose it. And then I'll tell her. And so I told her at like week 14, she actually overheard me on the phone and she's like, why are you talking to a baby doctor? And I just sort of looked at her and I said, well, because I need a baby doctor right now. So she was furious, just blew her away. And her main issue was that we left her out of it. And so when I explained my thought process as to why, when she could step out of her anger, she understood it, but she was still just angry. And then of course, she's a freshman in college, sophomore in college. The thought of her mother having a baby was like, ugh, it just grossed her out. Like, oh, come on, that's gross. So I absolutely gave her the freedom to hate me as much as she needed to hate me. I can't tell her how to feel.
Sure.
It was a huge thing for her. So the pregnancy wasn't easy for her. She rallied around, and we have a sort of a rule in our house where we have to hit the pause button. So we can all be angry, but when we sit down to eat, or when we say goodnight, or when one of us is leaving to go somewhere, we say pause button, and we hit the pause button, and we hug and kiss and I love you and goodbye. We hit the pause button and we have dinner and we talk about our day. We have, all right, unpause, go ahead and, slam your door at me, so that you can still sort of continue normal life. And we started that after Molly died because it was so easy for us to all just get lost in the devastation that we had to have times that we could just pause it. Like, all right, let's make believe it didn't happen for an hour. Can we just make believe? So it was hard on her. So she didn't want any part of the delivery. And when she found out I had to have the baby, we packed her up and sent her to Rachel's parents' house. Rachel's little sister, Allie, and Gracie became really close because they both lost sisters. And so, and of course, we became really close with that family. When Jen misses Rachel, she'll come and rub Kenny's tummy. Hi, Rach. Say hi to her daughter's kidney. So I know it's a life. So I'm at the hospital. I go they have to induce me. So they give me magnesium. So they had to, strip the membranes, rupture the membranes in your uterus. Look at me doing this. I'm not Italian, but I talk with my hands all the time. So that was, I'm on my back in the bed. The doctor's got her arm, all the way up to her shoulder is what it felt like. And I had just finished watching The Handmaid's Tale, and that's a pretty devastating TV series.
Yeah.
And there are some very, very rough scenes. So I said, oh my gosh, I feel like Offred from The Handmaid's Tale. And anyone listening that's watched it will know the horrible scene I'm talking about with a very pregnant Offred. So all of the young LNAs and nursing assistants start cracking up because they're watching it. The obstetrician's like, she's a woman. She goes, I know you're all laughing, but I feel like I'm the bad guy here. I said, yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay. You're fine. So I had all women. That was another really cool sort of aspect of it. The only boys at the delivery were Jack and Kenny. And it was, the 18-year-old LNA to the 42-year-old OB to the on-call OB who is retired but works part-time, in every age in between. It was really sort of a cool kind of thing. It was like this bevy of beautiful maidens bringing this baby into the world. And so I woke up in the morning, I thought I would be up all night and have to have Pitocin and labor and all this. And I woke up in the morning and it's morning. And I thought, well, that's weird. No one woke me up. So I got up and I called and ordered breakfast and got some coffee and put the news on. And my tummy felt warm, but not overly so. The nurse comes in. No, the OB comes in and she's doing her rounds and she goes, how are you feeling? And I'm like, fine. Are we not having a baby today? And she looks at me and she said, you went into labor all by yourself at 2:00 in the morning. You're like, actively in labor. And I'm like, okay, I don't feel a thing. Okay, I believe you. So the heat in my tummy was that. So they broke my water and then I felt it, So I called Kenny at like 9. I think we're going to have the baby today. You should probably drop Gracie off at her dance competition and come on up. And then I call him like a half an hour later. Okay, I think we're going to have the baby soon. I think you need to come now. And then they break my water. And now my contractions are like 2 minutes apart. And I'm like, okay, now. So Kenny comes flying up to the hospital. And so I had Jack. So I started pushing. So I went into active labor where I was in a lot of pain and really felt the contractions at about 11:30. And Jack was born at 12:30. Wow. So 1 hour basically. And basically they said, all right, it's time to push. We think you're ready to push. And I said, well, I don't feel ready. And they're like, again, just give a push. So I gave a sort of a half-hearted push. And the doctor said, his head's right here. Let's do this. And so I said, okay. And so next contraction, I pushed. And out he came. It was like really the one push wonder. He just came flying out, little teeny tiny Jack. And then my lunch came. So I'm like, eat breakfast, have a baby, have lunch. And it was the same person with the tray. And she's like, okay, I wasn't expecting this. Like, because she came in like, right. I still had
right afterwards.
Yeah, it was great.
Like you did it on purpose.
Yeah,
I need lunch right afterwards.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So the delivery was super quick, like, and my milk came in, which I was, wondered about that. I didn't have the rush of milk that I had with Gracie and Molly. I had to drink a ton of water, way more water. And I also supplemented with breast milk from other moms. So there's this wonderful group. Probably every state would have it, but it's called Human Milk for Human Babies. And it's like the New Hampshire chapter. And so I met two amazing women. This woman, Jackie, so her name is not lost on me. She was the first woman I met, and they were moving, and her daughter was almost done, and she had 200 bags of breast milk. And she's like, it's all yours. And so I had it in my whole neighborhood's freezers, right? Freezers everywhere had milk for Jack. And so I would supplement during the day with the bottled, because he was little and they were concerned he wouldn't gain weight fast enough. They wanted me to use formula. I am not anti-formula in generic terms, but I just breastfed both my babies and very much felt like that's what I wanted to do with Jack.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do it. And then a good friend of mine, Kelsey, she had a baby like 3 months after Jack, and she massively produces milk. And so when my Jackie milk ran out, she'd come every Sunday with a cooler full of milk for me. Wow. With 30 bags of milk, and her kids would decorate it up to Jack. Love, hated. Yeah, it was awesome.
My sister, she had extra milk too, and she was able to donate it. I'm just like, yeah,
it's the best thing. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, that's sort of the birth piece. I mean, the press coverage was intense, but wonderful. I mean, why would I not want to share this?
How far along were you when you went into labor?
So I had just finished week 34. And I was into week 35. So he was considered early, not preemie. But he was little, and he had his little throat would collapse. So, which is not uncommon, actually. It immediately opens the minute you exhale. So you swallow or breathe in and it closes, but the minute you exhale, it opens up again. So it won't cause a baby to asphyxiate, but it can interfere with gulping because it gets, it interferes with the rhythm of swallowing. So those babies often take a couple of sips and stop. So they were very, I always nursed him sort of upright a bit. That it lasted about 8 months, which is what they said it would last, and it sometimes happens with babies that are born full term. It's just like a week. It's like a little weak esophagus. Wow. So that was the only real issue. He gained weight very slowly the first 2 weeks. And once I had the breast milk to supplement, because I supplemented with formula a little bit, but he didn't like it. He threw it up. He cried after. I'm like, okay, he's throwing up. This isn't helping him. Like, why? What? So once I could supplement with the breast milk. Oh my God, did he drink that milk down? I would nurse each side and then give him a bottle. And so when he got hungry, he would root and look for the boob because I always started there. And then when he was, when the boob was no longer sufficient, he got the bottle and he drank from the bottle just fine. All my babies did though. Gracie and Molly, I pumped milk for them because my mother would babysit. And so they were both exclusive breast milk for the first 12 months of their lives and nothing else but milk. But most of it, just as much of it was from a bottle as from me. So I'm lucky there too. I don't take that lightly either. Women can suffer and struggle so much with breastfeeding. It breaks my heart. Yeah. So I don't take lightly the fact.
What about your other births? Were they also vaginal births too?
Yep. All vaginal births. Gracie and Molly both, I went into labor at 8 p.m. and Gracie was born at 3 a.m. And with Molly, I went into labor at 8 a.m. and she was born at 3 p.m.
Wow.
And I had a really hard time with the labor part with Gracie. I threw up and threw up and threw up and pooped and pooped and pooped and threw up and threw up. And then when I could finally push, it was such relief. And with Molly, I flew through the labor. I was no problem. But it was daytime. And so I didn't poop all day. And so every time I pushed with Molly, I'd poop, which is just kind of funny. And then they had to break her water. When they broke her water, there was poop and there was meconium in the water. So they had to bring in all the heavy artillery and she was fine. She didn't ingest any of it, but the pushing was hard for Molly. My contraction stopped. Her big giant head tore me open. They had to give me Pitocin and the doctor was like, don't push. And I'm like, okay, you can't tell a woman in active labor, don't push. Like, okay. And so she came flying out. But that, again, 8 hours start to finish, not difficult.
Yeah.
Birth, plenty of breast milk. And
now with Jack, what do you think made it so easy?
I just think he was little, first of all.
Sure.
I just think, I will say the biggest difference in me, other than the 20-year age difference, is that I did CrossFit the whole time. And I'm doing a lot of research now on just the feminine mystique, so to speak, like female bodies. And we are just blessed and doomed by our hormones from day one. We're little babies born, hormone rage for teenage, hormone rage to adjust into childbearing years, hormone for making babies, having babies, not having babies. And then they all go away and here's menopause, right? And our bodies are designed for this massive tropical storm of hormone reality is the best way I can describe it. But it's not without side effects. Hormonal women, we go through all these physical responses that, doctors are, oh, you're just in menopause. Oh, well, okay, no, there's got to be ways. So my biggest thing, one of the biggest things that helps women in menopause is weightlifting, lifting heavy weight, because lifting heavy weight triggers a testosterone response in the body because we have testosterone and the building muscle relies on that. And the testosterone response stimulates estrogen. So we don't make new estrogen, but the estrogen just goes to sleep because we don't need it anymore. So you're stimulating estrogen. You're stimulating the estrogen you have in your 65-year-old body or whatever, to get into your blood. Right. So when having Jack with Gracie and Molly, I was a competitive distance runner. So I ran, but weightlifting was a completely different beast. I maintained mobility. I think one of the factors for my easy delivery was that I was weightlifting. I did CrossFit. My last CrossFit workout was Wednesday and I had Jack Saturday. Thursday and Friday were like the preeclampsia freakout days.
Wow.
Yep. So that would
incredible.
Be yeah. Now this is me though. The other piece I have to say, it's another way that I'm very lucky I live inside this body. Pregnancy and childbirth was never difficult. I mean, it just wasn't. And if I look at my first contraction to Jack's birth, it was about the same time frame, 2 a.m. to noon. Wow. It was about, it was about the same time frame as Gracie and Molly.
Yeah.
So, and with pushing, Gracie was like 45 minutes of pushing. Molly was like 90 minutes of pushing, but it's because the whole thing sort of stopped. But I was never pushing for hours and hours. It was relatively quick. Yeah. So I think sometimes it's the luck of the draw. I just got put into a body that does well in the baby department.
Yeah, but you've been taking care of it really well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Yep, ask away.
One, how did it go talking to your husband about this when you approached having a baby with him?
So I didn't say anything to anyone for a long time. And I did a lot of the medical stuff. At first, I was just going to do it by myself. Kenny and I had been struggling in our marriage. So I didn't say anything to anyone. And when I finally had met Dr. Cardone and knew that this was a possibility, one of Dr. Cardone's questions was, do you have a partner to do this with? And I said, well, I do. I wasn't necessarily going to involve him in it. But I mean, we live together and we share a child in heaven. And he said, it's sometimes just a much better experience. So I went home and said, so listen, I've been having these dreams. And he just jumped on board. He's like, okay. I will say things were so horrible that he would have jumped off a cliff if he thought it would make me feel better. We were in such a devastatingly horrible place. Yeah. And then when the dreams went away and we did the lawsuit and we didn't talk about it, when I was sipping my coffee waiting for him to come down. And when I said, hey, guess what dream I had last night? And he just grinned. He's like, baby dream? Yep. So he's the consummate father, for all the flaws that people have and all the shortcomings and all the ways we could be better. Kenny is the best dad. He just knows how to get right into the space of a kid and be there. One of his grandsons is on the autism spectrum. And, little kids with autism are very, very tender about who they're comfortable with, and we don't understand what goes on. And his grandson has maybe 4 or 5 people that he's comfortable with outside of his mom and dad. And Kenny's one of them. He goes right up and goes forehead to forehead with him, touches his face. That's Papa, smiles at him. That's Kenny. His affect is just so comfortable and safe. He's really, really a good dad. Mm-hmm. And he and Jack, they're go ahead, go play. They have a blast. He has a good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
And my other question was about gender. Did you already know you were having a boy?
Yes. So after all that went on with baby Gordy, I knew Gracie and Molly were girls. I didn't want any surprises. And so I wanted zero surprises with Jack. I also knew that gender was going to play a huge piece of how I coped with what having this baby would be like. So part of me hoped it would be a girl because I only knew girls. The one baby boy I had, I never got to know. Mm-hmm. But I also felt like I don't want to feel like I'm replacing Molly. It's like a new, like everything went through my head. When we went for the 22-week appointment and saw this little naked baby in there with his little winky, Kenny was just like, yeah, like, but both of us driving home, I just said, I'm anxious. I don't know what to do with this, because I think either way I would have been anxious. I know it has to be a boy or a girl. Which one's it going to be? But as the pregnancy went on, I felt better and better about it. And now that he's here, he is just so unabashedly Jack that even if I wanted to compare him to Molly or say he fills a void, he doesn't. Yes, he fills a void, the void of sadness, but he doesn't replace Molly. He has nothing to do with Molly. And I know that sounds impossible because he also has everything to do with Molly. But I think if he were a girl, it might have been a bit harder on Gracie as well. I think a little brother is perfect. Mm-hmm. It just fits. And he's named after a sweet boy. After Molly died, I became very active in these Facebook groups and online groups for parents that had lost children. And I met this sweet, beautiful woman named Brandy, who lives on the other side of the country. And I finally reached out and said, hey, I love your little boy, Jack, and I have his picture on my fridge. And she had Molly's picture on her fridge. And we had never shared any of this. She sends me a picture and there's Molly on her fridge. And I'm like, okay, Jack's on my fridge. Here we are. So we're good friends. We actually met last year at Disney. So when I found out that Jack was a boy, I messaged her and said, you can say no, but I would be honored if you would let me name him Jack. And so, of course, she said yes. Oh. So Jack. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, and Jack is it's just a simple, perfect name. Mm-hmm. Jack. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, tell us about your recovery. How did it go?
I had, with all of my kids, I had a bit of postpartum depression. I wouldn't say depression so much as anxiety. Mm-hmm. I got very sort of panic stricken mm-hmm. is the best way to describe it. And I had to I just wanted to spend a lot of time by myself with the never a problem with the baby. Just stop already, stop. Leave me be. No more company, that kind of thing. And that was the same with Jack. I had about 8 weeks, I'd say, where I was pretty an emotional basket case. However, I have a very supportive family. My mom and Kenny and Gracie. I mean, when I had postpartum with Gracie, obviously she was a baby, but super support around it. I didn't need medication for it, but I would reach out often to friends of mine that had babies that had also struggled a little bit with it. But physically, perfectly fine. Once all the puffy preeclampsia weight went away, I was back down to within 10 pounds of my starting weight almost immediately. Wow. And I didn't work out for a while. I gave myself time. Jack was born March 20th. And I think I went back into the gym June 1st. So I gave myself all of April and all of May just to sort of, mm-hmm. But then I did a 2-day CrossFit competition that August. So Jack was born in March. I did this CrossFit competition. I had to climb a rope. I had to, it was ridiculous. Walk on my hands, all these crazy things that, so I actually probably weighed about 150 then. I was still pretty heavy, but I had great recovery and but I had great recovery with Gracie and Molly as well. I was athletic to begin with. I, was a scholarship runner at BU in the 80s and ran for Nike for several years. I've never not been in really, really good physical shape, do a lot of hiking and skiing. So I think that's all part of it. If I were alive 200 years ago, I would have been one of those women that gives birth to her baby, in the field, puts the baby on the boob and keeps picking the green beans, yeah. I think that would have been me. Yeah. I wouldn't have needed to, have a lot of recovery.
Yeah. Now I think I cut you off earlier about press. How do you think that got out? That you had.
My friend who came and interviewed me right before I had Jack and then right after, he is a man that I grew up with. And I just gave him first rights on the story. Mm-hmm. So he put it on his local, AOL patch website. And that's all it takes. So then our local newspaper did a story like a week later. And then a friend of mine who's a DJ interviewed me on the radio station. This is all very local, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take long before suddenly I'm getting emails and phone calls and such for a story. So a lot of it was on Zoom. Some of it was in person. So there was actually two, Parenting Magazine and ABC, Hearst Television. They have an online sort of channel. I can't think of the name of it right now. And they came 2 separate Saturdays and spent the whole Saturday here, and basically the videos they created are about 8 minutes, but they're wonderful, wonderful. They go into everything I've shared here. They share, but they came up and did, video clips. And they interviewed Kenny and they interviewed Gracie and myself. The biggest piece of coverage we got came from the hospital in White Plains. So after my trigeminal neuralgia surgery, they came up here and did a story on me because I recovered so quickly from the brain surgeries that my neurologist, when I went back for my appointment before, right at when I was still bald and everything else, the hospital did a whole story on me, and they did a PR series. I was on a billboard, several billboards, and I was on, I was in their magazines and all of this, and it was on their website. And it just talked about retaking the stage after losing a child and having all this brain tumor surgery. So when I was pregnant, they wanted to come up and do a story while I was pregnant. And then of course, Jack came. They were supposed the Sunday that he was born Saturday. And that Sunday was when they were going to come up and do all this filming. And sorry, he came. So in the first year of his life, we communicated back and forth. And so Chromista TV was hired by Montefiore Medical Center to do a commercial. So they flew us all to Moab, Utah, to this canyon, this beautiful, Moab is amazing. And we filmed a TV commercial there. So this commercial played on TV in New York City all last summer for like 8 months. It was just like the sunrise, and I'm sitting on the top of this rock in a canyon, and music is playing. And so they did a whole photo shoot and all these interviews. And so if you go on the Montefiore website, it was amazing. But my picture was on about 50 billboards with Jack on the back. Like it's me looking out across a canyon with Jack and a backpack on my back. And it says every day is a day to rise. And the whole theme of the commercial was, the song was Sunshine on My Shoulders. And it's all about, it's darkest before the dawn, but the sun will come up and there's always hope. But that picture was on a 33-story building right outside of Madison Square Garden. So it was like 33 stories of Barb. So I was like, oh my gosh. So that was pretty amazing. So that was a pretty intense amount of press coverage, but what an honor. I mean,
yeah. How does it feel to see yourself on a 32-story building?
So we went to look, we picked up Gracie from Disney and we drove home. And so we drove through New York City so we could see it. So we're all sitting in the car and we turn onto 8th Avenue. And it's like 30 blocks up, but it's 33 stories. So it took us 10 minutes to get there, but we're just looking at me. I'm like, oh my, very surreal, like unbelievably surreal. And then, we double park, we have a trailer. This cop comes up, he goes, can't park here. And I pointed up at the picture. He goes, I know. And I'm like, there's Jack. And he's like, whoa. He's like, oh my God, my wife loves you. So we're doing selfies with the cop. So then a little crowd developed because the picture had only been up there a couple of months or maybe a month. So it was relatively new still. So we did all these selfies. It was fun. And then since then, so another sort of fun piece of that, I was coaching at my CrossFit gym and a gentleman came in for a drop-in. I'm like, oh, where are you from? And he's like, oh, Mahwah, New Jersey. And I said, have you ever seen a billboard with a lady with a baby on her back? He goes, yeah, Barb, this woman with cancer. Do you know her? And I just sort of looked at him and then he's talking and he's like, wait, your name is Barb. You're her? Like, it was like it's just the sweetest thing, But again, his wife had some serious complications around childbirth. And she had breast implants and she had them removed because she got super sick and almost died from something in there. That happened while she was trying to get pregnant. And thank goodness she did, because all of that could have tainted her breast milk, all of this. So they had this whole story. So my story was relevant to them, so those little things are fun. I run into somebody who lives in New York City and I ask, did you ever see that commercial? Every day. I'm like, okay, well, that was me. So yeah, it's fun. So I think they don't run anymore. Like I think that was a big, they changed their theme, the hospital's promotions, do different things. But that was a huge honor, I'll tell you right now. It was. Yeah. So So now life is, relatively normal. There are times, and I'll be very honest here, there are times when I'm overwhelmed, like when I think, okay, when Jack is 10, I'll be 67, like, okay, and Kenny will be 75, and that's old for a young kid. Now, Kenny's super youthful and young as well. Like for all of his health issues, if you looked at him, you wouldn't think he was 68 years old, not in a million years. He doesn't look it at all. And he's active and, still does a million things. But I'll look at the reality of it and it makes me anxious sometimes. However, some of my best friends are raising their grandchildren and they're my age and their grandchildren are Jack's age. And for all of the reasons that this happens, whether it's overdose deaths or whatever, whatever reason these people end up parenting their grandchildren, I'm really not alone as a woman my age with a 2-year-old. It's far more common than I think people give it credit. So I'm looking forward to the kindergarten drop-off line, primarily because I can stand with all the Grammys who are raising their kids, right? And all the mothers are young enough to be, my child. Well, yeah. So when I was going to Dr. Chaudhary, he would say, "You're old enough to be the mother of every pregnant woman right now." He goes, "I do the math every time I get a new one. All right, how old are you?" "Yep, Barb could be your mother."
I love funny. That.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went for a checkup and he's like, "Come on, have another one." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" He goes, "Why not? You're healthy." Like he was just so funny because he was so tender at first about it. Like, "Okay. And are you sure?" And yeah, he's funny. He's like, "I just think you should." I'm like, "Okay, well, we'll see." So I don't know. I go back and forth. I would love to, but my clinic, Dr. Cardoni has retired and Tammy goes, "All of us are sad because we all hoped you would come back," but the new doctors aren't him. So, so I don't know that there's a clinic in the United States that would take a 60-year-old. I don't know.
I know my doctor said the cutoff is 50.
Yeah. Well, there are some over 50. There are clinics over 50, but I think they're few and far between, or they don't say it and you make an appointment and you go in and they do a whole assessment and they say, "Yep, you know what? Yes." Because a lot of them are 52. That was a common, my clinic is 53. So if you know anyone that's 50, 51, 52, or 53, send them to Stoneham, Mass.
Yeah.
That's a clinic for women over 50.
Yeah.
And once you're in, you can go over the age limit once you've already started the process. Like I thought once I turned 56, I was done. And he goes, no, you're already here. You're here. You're in process now. So I was able to continue.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else you want to add about your birth or pregnancy?
I do want to acknowledge that I'm incredibly lucky and that I know I'm not the norm at all. So 2 things. I feel that I want my birth to be permission for women to put their foot down and say, just because my age is this number doesn't mean I don't deserve the chance to try this. It's my body and my life, and I want to try this. The other side of it is I want all these women struggling to be mothers to know that I don't take it lightly and that I don't want my ease of this to make them feel that it won't happen for them. It's such a tender balance. I am incredibly freaking lucky. I just am, and I wish I could just shed the luck onto everyone that wants to be a mom and have a baby. I get it. So I'm just committed to the whole IVF process. And, so I guess I would want anyone listening to know that it's not lost on me if you're on your 5th round or you've tried Clomid and then you've tried IUI and then you've tried IVF and it's fail after fail after fail. And now you're looking at other options and considering surrogacy. And I just love you and I hug you and I'm sorry. And it's not lost on me that that wasn't my experience. But the fact that I could do it means that a lot more women can than are given the chance to. And so, go ahead and use my name, tell them I said, well, Barb did it. I want to try,
Yeah.
I guess
your story gives so much hope to so many women.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge too, I can climb a rope. I can climb a rope 18 feet up. It takes me a bit, but I can do it and I can let myself back down and I'm 60. That in and of itself is I'm lucky in this body,
Yeah.
So I know that's part of it, but in terms of growing a baby, it's what we're designed to do. And I feel that every woman who wants to be a mom deserves the chance to try it, no matter how old she is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest challenge being pregnant at 57?
I would say my knees, because my knees are every bit my age. Thank you very much. So yeah, I did have I will say physically, I had a much harder time getting up and down stairs than I did with Gracie and Molly. I had to, I have to walk around upstairs for a long while in the morning before I could come down because my knees hurt so much. So that was tricky. And I would say some of it was just feeling that I had to justify my actions, I was considered an older mother having babies at 38 and 40, So there were lots and lots of people whose initial response, people were nice to me to my face, but feeling, being afraid to tell somebody because I was afraid of judgment. Like one of Kenny's children was horrible about it and really was upset and tried to get the whole family against us. And it was just horrible. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I can't fault her. She's going to feel what she feels. She had her reasons for being that angry, but it was hard on us. Sure. It was just like, come on, this is a beautiful thing. And you might not agree with me, but you're not my mom. And my mother was quite vocal initially that she thought it was a poor idea. And she didn't find out until I was 22 weeks along. And she got happy tears and cried. And Jack loves his nanny. Oh my gosh. She comes over and just plays with him so Kenny and I can get stuff done around the house. When she shows up, boy, he just flies out the door. Here's another thing. And this is for maybe women that would like to have another child or women that haven't had children yet and are having children older. Either way, when I was 38, I had a mortgage. I was deep in my career. I still cared that my boobs looked good in a small bikini top. I wanted a flat tummy. I wanted to go out and hang out with my friends. Like I was still in the thick of my life, right? Mm-hmm. So having a child was one more thing to add to 50 other things. Mm-hmm. At my age, I could give two hoots what I look like naked. I want to be healthy, but I don't care now in a way that I did then. Yeah. I'm at a place in my career where I'm self-employed. I'm not beholden to a boss that's going to be upset if I have to take time off to go nurse my baby. If I don't sleep all night, well, that happens to me anyway. I'm in menopause. Now I have company, do I pee when I sneeze? I did anyway. Do I cry all the time? Still do. You know what I mean? Do I have a bloated belly? Yeah, this one has a baby in it, but it's no different than if I didn't have, there are so many aspects of motherhood, of growing the baby, of being a mother that are just easier. I feel like the grandmother sometime, I just get to enjoy it because I just, like 2 nights ago, it was that full moon, that big moon. Oh my God, Jack was up all night. So he still nurses. He's 2.5 and he still nurses quite a bit at night.
Incredible.
I know. I love it. So I don't want to stop. When he's ready to stop, I'll stop. But people like 2.5. And I'm like, well, Molly nursed until she was 2.5, but she was ready to stop by then. He, the first thing he says when I get home, boop, calls it boop, boop, boop on a couch, boop on a porch, boop on a chair, like wherever he wants me to be. So a few nights ago, we were just up all night. So I just didn't get up. We just stayed in bed until like 8:30 because I can. Yeah. And so I've traveled. I've gotten drunk and come home and been hungover. Mm-hmm. I've gone out on dates. I've gone dancing in my little black dress. I've done it. I'm not missing anything. Yeah. If I spend 5 days in a row home with my 2-year-old, yay. Yeah. I'm not, that part has been so much easier because I don't have the stressors, And if I have a boss that doesn't like that I'm missing work for Jack, then I can just say, okay, well, bye, because I'm not counting on that. My mortgage is paid off. It's just a different beast. And so I encourage women who have career focus, suddenly, oh no, I'm 45 and now I want to have a baby. And what if I can't? Mm-hmm. Go for it because you'll be a really, really, really relaxed, well-rounded mom when that baby comes out. So,
even me at 42, I think I'm
absolutely
more relaxed now.
Yes. Oh, no kid. So I was 40 when Molly was born. So most of my friends, their kids were 5, 6, 7 years older than mine. And they had them at the end of the 20s, 30s, and they still bemoaned, oh, ever since babies, my body's terrible. So 10 years later, when I had Molly, I was in my 40s. I'm like, well, my body was going to be terrible anyway, so I'll just do the best I can. You have these, you're in a different place than you were when you were 32.
Definitely.
And in terms of motherhood, age is a good thing. It's not that being a young mother is a bad thing, but you don't lose anything having your 20 kid-free years be from 20 to 40 than from 40 to 60, Yeah. My mom, I went off to college when my mom was 38. What?
Wow.
She wasn't even 40
young.
Yeah. She was 18 with my brother and 21 with me. Yeah. And then Yeah. So it's just a different, so she had a lot of retirement years without kids. Poor Kenny, his son, Kenny Jr. is 40. Jack is 2, right? So for 38 years, he's had babies or teenagers but yeah, it's his calling. It's what he does.
I love that.
Yeah.
And is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth over 40?
I would say spend a good amount of time really becoming healthy. Make believe that you're going to enter a beauty pageant, or, that the biggest thing would be overall health. And let me please include how you feel about yourself, like loving yourself, feeling good about who you are, and acknowledging that you're perfect just the way you are. So much of us as women and mothers, we have incredible pressure to be all of it, to look pretty and clean the house and work full time and don't complain. And, all the things that can make us just feel overwhelmed. But I do feel that oftentimes women get pregnant and then think, okay, now I need to get healthy.
Yes.
And find good supplements to be on. Go start taking prenatal vitamins. Mm-hmm. I have my daughter on prenatal vitamins, not because I want her to have a baby, but they're the best vitamins. Yeah. They're made to help your body grow a baby, so everything is in there. Yeah. Things like that. But and I would say another really good way to prepare yourself for pregnancy and being healthy is to spend at least 30 to 45 minutes a day doing something you love, going for a walk, watching that show you love, sitting by a river, listening to music. I don't know, something that is just something that really is you. Like for me, it was CrossFit and going to the gym. Sometimes I'd already worked out or I'd gone for, I'd done something different. I just love my gym friends. I would just go hang out down there, because I could. And it just made me feel better about myself. I liked being around those people. So surround yourself with people that think you're great,
I love it.
Those other people don't matter.
That's right.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant if you could go back?
Pregnant in general or pregnant specifically with Jack?
With Jack.
I don't know. I guess not to worry so much, but how do you not worry when you're pregnant at 57? Yeah. Being 57 and really putting a lot of thought into becoming pregnant, I really was mindful about it already. Jack was probably my best pregnancy, wow. Because I could just live in it and not worry. I was coaching track and cross country when I was pregnant with Gracie and Molly, and I never stopped the coaching. I took them to the track in their little carriers. I nursed both of them in the press box announcing track meets, first call mile, put the mic down, switch boobs. Okay. First call 800, they were a part of a much busier life. Yeah. So I don't know. The advice I would give 38-year-old and 40-year-old Barb was to slow down and enjoy it and don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to please 50 other people. Just take care of yourself and the baby. But that's not the mindset of so many young mothers. It just isn't. We're still so caught up in everything else. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just enjoy it. Somebody made a comment the other day. Oh yeah, I'm going to have another kid. I'll have no life. I'm like, what do you mean you'll have no life? You'll have an amazing life with 2 kids. Like, when does having a child mean you have no life? And so sometimes just redefining what it means to have a life, mm-hmm. You won't have a sorority house life, but is that the life you want as a mother?
Right.
Sometimes we're quick to say my life ended with children. No, your life starts. It's a whole mm-hmm. different life.
That's right.
So yeah,
I love that.
But just enjoy it. I think be mindful about it. Just be in it, sit in it, mm-hmm. Hold that baby with the smelly diaper and your armpits, and which smells worse, the armpits that you haven't washed in 3 days or that diaper? They smell the same. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give another woman over 40 trying to get pregnant right now?
To be patient, to be insistent with the doctors, and be patient with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like put your foot down, advocate. I can do this. This is what I want. What's the next step? And also to enjoy the next step. The other thing that surprised me about IVF was that, especially at my age, if I didn't pass the colonoscopy, there was no baby. If I didn't pass the mammogram, there was no baby. If I didn't pass the blood work, there was no baby. If I didn't pass every little test had to be a certain way or you didn't take the next step. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was safe. Mm-hmm. So that's a process that I found a lot of comfort in the process, because everything that went well, that had nothing to do with conception, just the body, gave me confidence. And so I would say, women over 40, just be confident in your health, but advocate advocate for yourself firmly, stand with a fist, that it was a movie and there was a Native American woman, her name was Stands with Fist because she was strong. So stand with your fist, right? But when it comes to you, when you look in the mirror, give yourself a hug, take a big breath, acknowledge that it will be fine, one step at a time, and be patient. Because all that stress, it's hard not to stress and worry, but sometimes it's our own worst enemy,
It is.
So enjoy the process. Forget the outcome as much as you can and enjoy every little bit. Enjoy slapping that patch on your butt and enjoy the injections, as weird as they were.
Yeah.
I just tried to enjoy it all. So that every bit of it was an experience. Again, it was easy for me because I wasn't clinging to this possibility of the outcome being what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how to address that. Just be good to yourself.
Yeah.
Just, love yourself and somehow it'll be okay. Right?
Yeah. Now, where can our listeners find you on the internet? Tell us a little bit more.
So I have an Instagram page. It's called Barb_444. That's my angel number. I love that number. My Facebook is just Barb Higgins, and I live in New Hampshire. And it's a public page, so you can look at it and you can follow it, or you can friend request. And I typically always just accept the friend requests. I have a website, which is 1000tinysteps.com. And that's where my podcast is. I do a weekly blog. I also do a weekly email, and I sell nothing on the email. It's not one of those emails that you read and then you have 5 paragraphs of stuff you should buy from that person or services. No, I just tell you what's going on. My daughter, Molly.
What's your podcast about?
So it's called 1000 Tiny Steps, and it's basically about my life. And so it's basically talking about all the steps that happen before something big happens. When I taught high school health, I would say, people don't wake up and say, I think I'll get drunk and kill somebody with my car today. But people get drunk and kill people with their cars all the time. Yeah. That choice started 1,000 steps ago. Lots of things happen for that person to wake up on that day to create those circumstances for that event to happen. And good things. You don't just wake up and say, I'm going to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal and then go and win the medal. No, the training and the planning starts thousands of steps prior to crossing that finish line, right? Yeah. So that was my lesson. So for my podcast, my initial starting it was I was devastated about Molly's death and just needed to relive my life to see, where did it start? What was the first step in the steps that contributed to the circumstances that put us in the place as a family, that created the circumstances around which Molly got sick, like all of it. I know that I didn't cause the brain tumor, but so many things, there were so many left turns that could have been right turns in her journey. And I just needed to search it. So basically it's the life story of Barb Higgins, and I've had quite a life. I've been an amazingly talented athlete. I was very asthmatic as a child and went to college for free. I suffered terrible sexual abuse as a child and was able to come out of that relatively unscathed. So I talk about that. I talk about the brain tumors. I just talk about all of it. I just talk about, each sort of chunk of episodes is about one thing. I talk about my alcoholism and my struggles with sobriety and drug addiction and drug use. I talk about, I had a horrible job loss. I talk about how traumatic that was. And so I just sort of talk about it, but I storytell it in a way that there'll be something in it that you could take away from it. It isn't just about my job loss or my AA experience or my child loss or my full scholarship. Everything touches on things that we can all relate to. And so my main reason for doing it selfishly was just to feel better. And then sort of more in terms of helping, I just think we don't talk about the ugly stuff sometimes. And why shouldn't I just share my life, the good, the bad, the ugly? Because somebody will listen and say, oh my God, thank you for sharing. And I will say, I put some of my episodes, I had 2 or 3 that I post on the website page. And the episode where I describe in detail what happened to me when I was sexually abused has had thousands of listens. And I get responses from that one all the time. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this. I could never do it, but listening to you say the words has helped me say the words, so that now is a bigger thing for me. Now on the podcast, because I have a book coming out, which is called Motherland. Hopefully by the time this podcast airs, it'll be even closer. I've talked a lot about the process of writing the book. I've talked a lot about just sort of how I'm doing now in mothering Jack. Jack, of course, there was a whole season of episodes on Jack and having Jack. So it's about everything. It's about what it's like to be Barb Higgins, and how Barb Higgins isn't really any different than many of you. And take a listen and see if you learn anything. And I'm starting now to have guests. So someday I would love to have you as a guest. Let's let your life unfold and see where you fit in.
Yeah, I would love that.
Be wonderful. Yeah. But I've met amazing people like Coco. There's also a podcast in New Zealand or Australia. I mix up those two. Isn't that terrible? And it's called The Three Things That Make You Go, in the terms of marriage, motherhood, and menopause. And this woman is phenomenal. You should connect with her. She's terrific. Yeah. So I was a guest on her podcast, and she talks about everything. She's wonderful. But these are the women I've met, and so, and I am not at all like feminist in the man-hating way, but I do feel that we have a hard time as a society just letting men and women be equal. We don't have to be the same. I don't have to be masculine to be like a guy, and a guy doesn't have to be feminine to be like a woman. Why can't we all be who we are and have equal status here? And so a lot of my podcasting is geared to women because I feel that we still really need each other in a way that men don't. Men have a brotherhood, and that brotherhood has existed for generations. And not that makes life easier for men. It doesn't. But in my podcast experience, the camaraderie and the fellowship and the connection and love that I've gotten from women that I've only ever met just like this, it has been life-saving for me. And that isn't at all what I thought about when I started a podcast. I just thought I needed to share my story.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you want to share what Motherland is about?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. So Motherland is essentially a memoir that starts with Molly's death, starts with the day I come home from that vacation I was on the week before she died. And it ends with the birth of Jack and the first couple of years of Jack, and finally getting rid of this couch in my living room, the brown couch. So the first chapter is the pink dress, and that's the dress that Molly's buried in. And the brown couch was the last piece of furniture she was on before the ambulance came. And so, see, this is where having a helper, an author, published author, can create these themes that are amazing. So everything in between is Motherland. So losing a child, going through all of that, Kenny's and my relationship, and Gracie and how she's gone through it, the tumors, all of it. And then we go into having Jack and what it's like, what that was like, and what it's like having a baby, and how that's tied into the loss of Molly, and all of the support for mothers that have lost children. And any pregnancy loss is a traumatic loss. I will say losing Molly was a lot more traumatic than losing baby Gordy. I never really knew baby Gordy. At 25 weeks, I lost the potential. I had a 13-year relationship with Molly, whole different level of loss. Yeah. Having said that, losing baby Gordy was devastating. So I talk about all of this in Motherland, and we put a whole lot more in there. Quite honestly, I talked a lot more about my addiction. I talked a lot more about my struggles with Kenny and all of the chaos leading up to Molly's death in my personal life. None of that is in the book because it really detracts from the theme of the story, which is Molly, and then Jack. So my hope is to be able to have a couple of follow-up memoirs where I'm really, really open about my addiction and what sexual abuse does to your mindset as you grow up and navigate relationships and such in life, both romantic and friendship wise. That's a whole story in and of itself. And I think that's an audience that needs help. Mm-hmm. Not everyone that's been abused grows up to be abusive or to suffer tremendously from their abuse, but a lot of us do. And then, after Molly died, I had a couple of people that weren't so terrific in my life. And that would probably be book number 3. But my goal is just to share it all honestly, because I find that I'm not the only one that's gone through anything I've gone through. And people, if somebody has a problem with me, that's none of my business. That's their problem.
That's right.
I just let it, So that's been hard for me. I've always worried tremendously about what people think of me, but I don't care now.
Yeah. Was it scary putting yourself out there at first?
Yes. Oh, yes. My first website was all, there was no photos of me on it. I didn't want any pictures of me. It was all like graphics and little footprints and my web designer was like, "What?" And I said, I don't want me on there. I don't need to be on there right now. It's just going to be a place for my podcast. So of course, now that my face has been on a 33-story building and 50 billboards, I'm a little more comfortable with it now. But yes, yes. And I'm unbelievably anxious about the book. Just because you can't write a memoir that includes a whole group of people and not offend somebody in there, right? Somebody's going to look at something. So I'm anxious about that, but I also know that that's just part of it. And again, if somebody is upset about something I say, it's none of my business. They can be upset. They have permission to be upset. There's nothing created with malice in my book, but there are tender stories in there. So it'll be interesting, but
you have an incredible story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being willing to listen. That's just as important as me sharing it. You wanted to hear it. So that makes me feel good inside.
And thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.